This video course is designed as a supplement to Behind the Wheel ELDT training. Most of this content was covered in ELDT theory training, but is also required to be taught in the Behind the Wheel training curriculum as well. Please follow me as I read through the material and pause the video if you need more time to understand each slide. Thank you. We're moving on to the hazards of night driving. During night driving, visual accuracy is reduced in the darkness, and the eyes have difficulty adjusting to abrupt changes from light to darkness. Oncoming headlights can temporarily blind you. They can take several seconds for eyes to recover from this. Do not flash your high beams at oncoming drivers who have their high beams on. This could cause both drivers temporary blindness. Although driver fatigue is always a danger, it's more of a factor at night. Fatigue can reduce reaction times and can lead to falling asleep at the wheel. Driver inexperience, along with limited visibility due to darkness and the inability to judge space management, makes inexperienced drivers especially dangerous at night. Unfamiliar routes are more dangerous at night when you can't see as well as judge turns and obstacles sooner. There is a higher chance of encountering drivers under the influence of alcohol or drugs at night. Other roadway users are also harder to see. This can include pedestrians like joggers, bicyclists, or even animals such as deer. All become more difficult to see at night. Even objects in the road could appear seemingly out of nowhere at night. We know you got this. Night driving tips include: keep your windshield, mirrors, and headlights clean. Use high beams whenever possible. Do not drive at a speed beyond the visual range of your headlights. Signal your intentions earlier than normal. Leave more space between you and the vehicle ahead. Use routes you are familiar with, or at least plan your route ahead of time. Make sure you are well rested. Don't look directly into the headlights of oncoming vehicles. Listen to your CB for warnings about hazards ahead of you. Drive slower than you would during the day. Vehicle preparations for winter. Number 1, coolant level and antifreeze concentration. Make sure coolant level is correct and the antifreeze concentration is high enough to prevent the coolant from freezing. Number 2, make sure cab heater and defroster are working properly. Also, if equipped, make sure mirror heaters and fuel tank heaters are working. Number 3, check condition of wiper blades and fill the windshield washer fluid with the type that will not freeze. Number 4, make sure your tires have a minimum tread depth. Do you need tire chains? If so, are they the right size and are they in good condition? Number 5, brake balance checked. Do all your brakes apply pressure equally? In other words, are the brakes adjusted properly? You don't want one applying stronger or quicker than others. Also, when it comes to the brake system, make sure your air tanks are drained daily to keep moisture out that could freeze. Make sure your air dryer or alcohol evaporators are working properly. Number 6, lights and reflectors. Make sure to keep them clean and working. It is very important for you to see where you're going and for other drivers to see you. Number 7, keep windows and mirrors clear of ice and snow using a scraper and defroster. Number 8, keep steps clear and handholds free of ice and snow to prevent slipping and falling. Number 9, wiring and air lines become brittle in extreme cold conditions and can break easier. Snow and ice can build up on them and weigh them down, causing them to snag on things. Number 10, keep fuel tanks topped off regularly and use anti-gel fuel treatment. A full tank will prevent condensation in the tank, which causes water to get in the fuel line that could freeze and cause a breakdown. Fuel treatment prevents diesel fuel from turning to a gel-like consistency in freezing temperatures. Number 11, remove ice and snow from coupling devices before coupling. Make sure the fifth wheel is lubricated with winter-grade grease to prevent it from freezing and not doing its job. Emergency equipment to keep in your truck: a windshield scraper, a snow brush, extra windshield washer fluid, the antifreeze kind, a small shovel, flashlights, batteries, jumper cables, warning devices, and a hammer. For your protection, you should keep the following in your truck when the potential for winter driving exists: drinking water, extra food, medications as needed, extra clothes and blankets, heavy-duty jacket, boots, gloves, and a hat for being outside in the cold. Always remember the potential for breaking down. If you cannot keep your truck running on the side of the road or wherever it happens to be broken down, you might not have a heater. So always be prepared for the cold conditions and have extra food and supplies in case you are somewhere very remote during a storm and cannot get help for a couple days. Cold weather starting. Using ether or ether-based fluids like starter fluid can cause engine damage, and it's very flammable. Many companies will not want you to use this in their engines. So be sure you know what your company's procedures are concerning the use of starter fluid. Glow plugs are used to warm air coming into the engine, but are not used on many trucks nowadays. These might be on older diesel trucks that you encounter. Modern trucks use preheaters. Preheaters use electrical plugs and heating elements to keep engine fluids warm while the engine is shut off. When starting an engine in cold weather, it may be slow to crank up. In that case, do not continue cranking the engine if it does not start within a few seconds. Instead, stop cranking on it for a moment, then try it again for just a couple seconds. If it still doesn't crank, stop again for a moment and try again. If you continue cranking the engine when it doesn't start, you can run the battery dead or burn up the starter motor, which is just a small electrical motor made for very short periods of use. Winter driving hazards include black ice. If the road looks wet but temperatures are below 32 degrees, then black ice has probably formed on the road. This is more likely to happen where the sun does not shine on the road to dry it out. Bridges are also more likely to have ice on them since the cold air can get under the road surface. You will also have reduced visibility. Both falling snow and snow building up on your windows can reduce visibility. Adjust your speed to compensate for limited visibility. Reduced traction can be a factor. Snow-packed or icy surfaces have only about 1/5 of the traction of a wet surface. Reduced traction means reduced control and increased chances of spinning wheels, skidding, or even jackknifing. On wet surfaces, reduce your speed by 1/4. So if you are normally traveling 65 miles an hour, reduce that to 45 to 50 miles an hour. On a snow-covered surface, reduce your speed to approximately 1/2 of your normal speed. So if 65 miles per hour was normal, you would reduce it down to around 30. On ice-covered surfaces, reduce your speed to approximately 1/3 of your normal speed. So from 65 miles an hour, you want to reduce that down to about 20. skidding and jackknifing are the three main causes for skidding and jackknifing are over-acceleration, over-braking, and oversteering. So keep your driving slow and steady whenever you happen to be on a slippery surface due to water, snow, or ice. Wet and frozen brakes. Keep light pressure on the brakes for a short distance prior to stopping in order to warm them up and melt off the snow and ice and dry the pads out a little bit. Freeing a stuck vehicle. This happens a lot in the snow and ice. Avoid getting stuck by staying away from soft shoulders, deep snow, muddy roads, icy surfaces. If you do get stuck, don't panic and try these. Avoid spinning the wheels. This would only dig your truck down deeper. Use traction aids, such as sand or gravel in front of the tires, or use chains to gain traction. Turn your steering tire straight ahead to make rolling forward as easy as possible. Start in a higher gear and just ease on the throttle in order to prevent the wheels from spinning. Accelerate smooth and gently. Ease off at the first sign of wheel spin. Move the truck forward as far as you can until it loses traction, then back up again until it loses traction, then forward again, then back. Continue doing this until you can get the truck free. This rocking motion is a very common technique for freeing a stuck vehicle. Back, forward, back, forward, back, forward until you can finally roll on out of the situation. One more piece of advice that is not mentioned in this list would be to use your interaxle diff lock. If you have a tandem axle tractor and you can lock the two differentials in the rear end, be sure you do that as well to provide more traction instead of having all the power go straight to one axle. In the situation of where you need to be towed, you as the driver are still responsible for your truck, so stay in charge of the situation. Supervise the operation. If the tow truck driver is about to do something unsafe, be sure you speak up. Make sure there's enough cable or chain so when your truck is freed, it doesn't lurch into the tow truck and hit it. It's okay to pass the chain through a hole in the bumper, but not to the bumper. In other words, if you are the one connecting a chain to your truck, be sure you connect it to something solid like the frame or like a tow hook that is attached to the frame. Do not simply wrap it around something weaker like the bumper or a step, that type of thing. Before pulling, agree on a game plan. What signals will be used? What direction should you steer the wheels, etc. Keep everyone out of harm's way in case the cable or chain snaps. Mountain driving on upgrades. The heavier your vehicle is, the slower it will go. The steeper and or longer the grade, the slower your vehicle will also go. Monitor your vehicle's gauges for overheating and don't let the RPMs get too low so the vehicle lugs or stalls. Downshift into gear that allows the RPMs to stay in a safe range. In other words, so it's not so low that it's stalling and it's not too high where it's revving beyond the power band or overheating. Stay in the right lane unless passing a slower vehicle. Then do so very carefully. When traveling at speeds under 45 miles per hour on an interstate or highway, use your four-way flashers. Be aware of what other vehicles around you are doing, even those behind you. Because if you do have to pass a slower vehicle and move over to another left lane, you don't want to block somebody else, so you don't want to cut them off or anything. Just know what all the vehicles around you are doing and try to time it just right when you have to pass another vehicle so that you're not holding other cars back or creating a dangerous situation. Mountain driving downgrades. Be sure your brakes are operating properly and adjusted properly before you drive in the mountains. Based on the truck, the weight, and the desired speed or the gradient, select the appropriate gear and get in that gear before you go down the grade. You do not want to wait until you're already rolling downhill to shift gears or to select your proper speed or proper gear. Do that all before you go down the hill. It's always better to go too slow than too fast. Remember, the posted speed limits are for cars, not heavy trucks. Keep to the right and use four-way flashers when traveling below 45 miles per hour. Your speed should be selected so that the engine and/or the engine brake does most of the braking. Using your foot brake/service brakes should just be needed to make occasional adjustments in speed. Do not attempt to shift gears while going downhill. Use a safe braking technique that will not cause brake failure. Excessive use of the service brakes will cause extreme heat, leading to brake failure. So in other words, to review some of these concepts, select the right gear and speed before you go down the hill based on the weight of your truck, the steepness of the downgrade, and how fast you think is a safe speed. Get in that gear, slow down to that speed before you go downhill. Try to pick this speed pick a speed where your engine or your engine brake will be holding the truck back most of the time, and you do not have to rely on your service brakes to do most of the braking. It's okay to use your service brakes from time to time to adjust the speed, but you don't want to rely strictly on them to hold you back. If you do experience brake failure, then hopefully one of these next slides, here we go. It was the very next slide, look at that. If you experience brake failure while traveling down a downgrade, use a runaway truck ramp or a rest or bed to stop the truck. The picture to the left is what they call an arrestor bed. It's shorter than a ramp and is used when there's not enough room to build a ramp. Instead, they use a bed of deep sand or gravel that slows the runaway vehicle to a stop by sinking into the bed. Ramps will also use sand or gravel along with gravity to slow the vehicle. These cause lots of damage to the truck, but they help save lives. And hopefully you will never have to use one of these. Road Hazards 101. Road hazards come in many shapes, sizes, and species. They can be something as simple as a pothole or as crazy as a naked person running down the street in the middle of the night. Road hazards can be objects, road conditions, other drivers, traffic operations, or even weather conditions. Always be alert for hazards and try to anticipate hazards that may exist from the actions of others, both drivers and pedestrians alike. Where are some areas that have high potential for hazardous conditions? Construction zones, school zones, urban areas or cities, warehouses and docks, probably things like parking lots, truck stops. Oh, I'm such a good guesser. Road hazards could lead to emergency maneuvers. Now, even though I put some silly pictures up here, this is a serious topic, so forgive me. You want to develop a plan for a potential road hazard that could allow you to avoid it if it actually becomes a hazard. Remember, here we're talking about potential hazards, planning ahead in case it becomes a hazard. What are some plans you could choose that would help you avoid a hazard? Oh no, watch out, that truck, it's heading right for us. Generally, steering to avoid an emergency is better than trying to stop. This is called evasive steering. While driving, a good commercial motor vehicle operator will be constantly scanning for hazards and planning escape routes, just in case he or she needs to use one. If you have to use evasive steering, ease off the accelerator to gradually reduce speed. Do not use the brakes unless you can do so before using evasive steering to slow down first, then steer around the hazard. After steering around the hazard, you may have to counter steer immediately to stay on your intended path. Did you see the sign? The deer crossing sign? Imagine that. Continual scanning will allow you to know if the lanes beside your truck are clear in case you need to make an evasive maneuver. If there's no better path, you should steer to the right. It's better to force a vehicle off the road than steer to the left and cause a head-on collision. If a merging vehicle is trying to enter your lane, blow your horn. This will generally get their attention and help you avoid making an evasive maneuver. If that vehicle keeps trying to merge, swerve away from it, but do not get behind it in case they try to stop. Don't swerve around a merging vehicle if it puts you in the path of opposing traffic. Remember, it's better to collide with a vehicle traveling in the same direction than head on. I think she just failed. Emergency stopping techniques. Always remember, locking up the wheels is bad. It takes away your ability to control the vehicle. Newer trucks are equipped with anti-lock brake systems that help the driver remain in control of the vehicle during emergency braking. But older trucks without ABS systems had to be controlled using the following techniques. Controlled braking is a technique that uses the brakes in a controlled manner. Firm, steady pressure is put on the pedal, just not so much that the wheels lock up. In other words, you're using as much brake power as you can, just shy of locking the wheels up. This allows the wheels to continue turning and the driver to still have the ability to steer the vehicle and somewhat control it. Stab braking is another technique that was used before ABS systems or anti-lock brake systems. In order to use this technique, the driver would apply full pressure to the brakes until they lock up and then let off until the wheels roll again, then reapply pressure till it locks up, then let off again, and keep repeating this pulsing, stabbing pressure at the brakes, pump, pump, pump. It helps stop the vehicle while retaining some control of the vehicle. Remember, do not use these techniques if your commercial motor vehicle has ABS. And like I said, all new ones do. This would just be in the situation where you're driving an old truck, I would say probably early 90s or older. But you should know your vehicle well enough to know whether or not it has anti-lock brakes before you drive it. All right, using these techniques with the ABS system will confuse the system and cause it to not function properly. Remember, it's all about keeping control of the vehicle while you're trying to make that emergency stop. What if you have to steer off-road when doing an evasive maneuver? Try to slow down before you steer off-road. Try to keep some of the tires on the pavement. Slow way down or stop before steering back onto the pavement. This would help prevent any type of rollover situation. But remember, going off-road would cause you to lose a lot of control of the vehicle. So again, slow down before you do if you can. Keeping some tires on the pavement will help you retain some control, and not whipping the truck quickly back onto the pavement would prevent rollovers. All right, now we're talking about brake systems and how the brakes brake. Brakes can suffer a loss of air pressure. They can experience a blockage in the air lines. The brakes can fade when they are overheating. And there can be other mechanical failures to the brake system. If the air system leaks down to the point that the low air pressure warning buzzer starts to sound, get off the road and stop immediately, because that means your brakes are going to lock up once the pressure drops a little further. An air blockage is usually caused by ice in the air lines or dirt that got into the glad hands when they were not connected to something. That might happen on a truck or trailer that's been sitting somewhere for a long time. Brake fade happens when pads have been heated up from overuse, they become glazed over, and they are no longer effective in slowing the vehicle. As you see in the picture, that truck is going down a mountain and smoking from the brakes because they've overheated so much. Sometimes they even catch fire. If this happens, the parking or spring brakes will not slow the vehicle either. That's because they use the same pads and drums as your service brakes use. So if the pads and drums are no longer working, then none of the brake systems are going to work at that point. A mechanical failure occurs between the linkage and usually would only affect one wheel. Sometimes this might happen if you have a blowout on a tire and the rubber gets wrapped around the rim or the axle. It might break off some of the brake components and cause a brake failure there. If your brakes fail and you are not on a downgrade, try to let off the accelerator, downshift the truck, and use the engine to slow the vehicle down. Continue doing this until the truck slows down to a very slow speed, and then you could just use the parking brake or even the service brake maybe, but if you've slowed the truck with downshifting to about 20 miles an hour, then what little bit the brakes are still working might be enough to get it to stop completely. Handling blowouts. Now again, I'm trying to be funny here, but this is a serious subject matter. This is the kind of blowout we're talking about. Steer tire or front tire blowouts can be very dangerous because they can cause you to lose control of the truck. All right, blowouts can be caused for many reasons. Due to cracks in the tire casing, tire damage from debris. Debris always gets a bad rap. Potholes, nails, or even from heat on hot days, whether the tires are fully inflated or not. A careful pre-trip inspection should allow you to identify some of these causes before they lead to a tire blowout. A blowout, especially on a steer tire, will cause the vehicle to veer in the direction of the blowout. If this happens, grip the steering wheel tight and accelerate slightly to regain control of the vehicle. Now, this goes against your natural instinct. Generally, people want to let off the accelerator, start using the brakes, and slow the truck down as quickly as possible. However, you don't want to do that because it would cause the vehicle to continue moving in the direction of the blowout. So if you experience a steer tire blowout, your first goal is going to be to regain control of the truck. And you do that, like it says here, Grip the steering wheel tightly, accelerate slightly. We're not talking about accelerating up to 100 miles an hour. We're talking about accelerating just enough that your truck will maintain forward momentum instead of veering off to the side of the road and crashing. All right, so accelerate slightly. As soon as you can tell you've regained control of the truck, then you can let off the accelerator, slow down gradually, steer the truck where you want to put it. All right, this is kind of what we said here in the words. I got off the page a little bit with my thoughts, but again, I'll repeat. Once your forward momentum has been reestablished, you can ease off the throttle and allow the vehicle to slow down gradually, but do not start braking immediately to try and stop the vehicle, because it'll go in the direction of the blowout and could cause you to lose control of the vehicle completely. There's lots of videos on YouTube where you see a truck experience a steer tire blowout and they lose control immediately. It can be a mess. And again, I hope you never experience this. Front tire flats that happen at slow speeds are less noticeable and might cause the steering to feel heavy. If the rear tractor tire goes flat, or if you have a blowout on your drive axles or trailer, well, we'll stick with drive axle right now. You might feel the tractor fishtail a little bit, but sometimes it's not very noticeable. A flat tire or blowout on a trailer might not change the feel of the truck at all. If you don't hear the loud pop or bang, you might not even know that you have a flat tire on the trailer or your drive axle. But you should always be scanning your mirrors every couple moments, every 7 seconds or so, to be precise, if I can get my words out here. And scanning your mirrors will let you see things like flat tires or pieces of rubber, chunks of rubber flying from your truck, that kind of thing. So again, as a driver, you're always trying to be aware of your surroundings, whether that's the vehicles around you, the space around you, or what's going on with your truck and your load. Because remember, employers only want drivers with great skills. Thanks, Napoleon. You're a real smart fella. The causes of skids include overbraking, which is braking too hard for conditions, which allows the wheels to lock up and lose traction. Oversteering, steering too sharp or quickly for conditions, also allows front tires to lose traction. Over-accelerating is accelerating too quickly or too heavily for conditions. That allows the drive wheels to lose traction. Remember, skids are caused by overbraking, oversteering, or over-accelerating because it allows the vehicle to lose traction and therefore skid. Keep in mind that a skid is when tires lose traction for any reason. Driving habits like tailgating, speeding, and road conditions like rain or snow could lead to skids if the driver overbrakes, oversteers, or overaccelerates. But just a side note here, tailgating, speeding, rain, snow, ice, things like that, those alone do not cause a skid. But overbraking, oversteering, and overaccelerating happens often in those conditions, which does cause a skid. These are the bad types of skids. A tractor jackknife is when the tractor begins to slide sideways in a skid. A front wheel skid is when you turn the wheels to make a turn usually, and the truck continues to move forward because combination of things. The front tires are not getting enough traction to actually turn the vehicle in the direction you want it to go. That could be because the road is too slippery. It could be because the tires are worn out and don't have good traction. It could be because the tires are not inflated properly. It could be because the truck is too heavy. An all-wheel skid like in the last picture, is when they all are locked up and the truck is just sliding forward. The other one that's not pictured is a trailer jackknife, and that's when the trailer wheels lock up and the trailer slides to the side. Now, the good type of skids. You guessed it, none. Skid recovery. In order to recover from a skid, you need to stop braking or accelerating or doing whatever it is that caused that skid. If you're in a manual transmission truck, you could push in the clutch pedal to allow the wheels to turn again and maybe regain traction. That's if you were in a like over accelerating type of skid. However, I realize that if you're stepping on the brakes really hard and the vehicle begins to skid, you usually are doing that because you want the vehicle to stop. So letting off of the brakes to prevent skidding might not be an option. But if it is, remember, skids are caused by over braking, over accelerating, and oversteering. So if you stop doing those things, then hopefully your vehicle will regain traction. This video shows a driver doing a fantastic job of counter steering and to counteract the skid, the loss of control, and it's just simply amazing. All right, that happens to be the end of this video. Thank you so much for your patience, for putting up with my limited reading and narrating ability. Remember, I'm not an expert filmmaker. I'm just a CDL instructor. I wish the best for you, and I thank you again.